I'm sure this is going to be very shocking to hear from a guy in his early 20s, but I really like Spider-Man. Yeah, imagine that.
Okay, I'll admit I'm not the biggest superhero fan, as I've never read a single comic book in my life, but there always have been some that I thought were pretty cool, like Batman, Iron Man, and of course, Spider-Man. Despite not seeing any of the media around him until I was a teenager, I always thought he was cool. My first proper experience with the character came from seeing him in Captain America Civil War, which only reaffirmed that. I then had an interest in checking out the other Spider-Man movies and playing the PS4 game, which is one of my favorite games ever, so over spring break 2019, I actually did a marathon of all 7 Spider-Man movies that were out at the time. And while my opinions on them varied, there were 2 in particular that stood above the rest as my favorites, Spider-Man Homecoming and Into the Spider-Verse. Now, Spider-Verse is a movie that needs no introduction, since basically everything about what makes that movie so amazing has been discussed by anyone you can think of. I even discussed it myself in my Best Animated Feature ranking, as well as a sequel in my 2023 movies recap video. 2025 is coming soon, by the way. But Homecoming doesn't get discussed anywhere near as much as Spider-Verse does, and honestly, I think it's a shame because I love this movie.
Generally, the reception around this movie is that it's good, but not great, and I highly disagree, because at the time, I thought this was easily the best live-action Spider-Man movie, and don't really see why people seem to brush it off as just alright.
Don't get me wrong, I enjoy the original trilogy and have more of an appreciation for the amazing films than most people. Yes, I actually like both of the bad ones, but Homecoming just clicked with me more than any of the other ones did. So today, I'm going to be analyzing this movie and hopefully explain why I don't just think it's a great movie, but one of the absolute best to come from the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, right, since this is an MCU movie and ties into previous films in the series, I guess I should give a recap of what happened before, or at the very least, the stuff that's actually relevant to this one.
The Avengers. New York is nearly destroyed by an alien invasion. Captain America Civil War. Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, goes rogue to help his friend Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier, so Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, is forced to retrieve him. Steve assembles a team of heroes to help him, so Tony does the same, and the important one for us is a young teen named Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. Peter has powers given to him by a radioactive spider bite, and he creates shooters that can shoot a special web fluid he created. Tony takes him to Europe and gives him an upgraded suit, which enhances his web abilities, and a big battle ensues at an airport between the 2 teams. Steve and Bucky get away, some more plot stuff happens, it's not important right now. What is important is the post-credit scene where Peter returns home and checks out some of the new tech that Tony gave him.
Now that we have that established, on to Spider-Man Homecoming.
We open shortly after the events of the Avengers, where a construction worker named Adrian Toomes, played by Michael Keaton, is leading a renovation team to help rebuild most of the city after it was destroyed in the Battle of New York. Unfortunately for him, though, the city is signed a deal with Stark Industries to rebuild everything, meaning he's out of a job. And since he has a family to support, he has his crew begin mining some of the alien tech that they found. We then cut to 8 years later, though it really should be 5 years later since this movie takes place in 2017, not 2020, and Discovery is using the alien tech to create high-powered weapons and selling them on the black market. The most noteworthy being this mechanical bird suit, effectively turning him into a supervillain known as the Vulture.
Yeah, it's not actually said in the movie, but that's his villain name. He's the Vulture.
This is a fantastic setup, since it makes Vulture's motivations really clear and honestly understandable. He was just a normal guy trying to support his family that was screwed over by a billionaire getting priority, so he's forced to turn to a far less ethical way of getting by. And the time jump shows that he's been doing this for a long time, and it's fair to assume his methods have only gotten darker as time has gone on, since he's become desensitized to a lot of this stuff. And this isn't even the end of his path growing darker, but we'll get more into that later. For now, we get the Marvel logo sequence, which plays an orchestral version of the classic Spider-Man theme, and that's great. And then we see Peter, played by Tom Holland, making a vlog of his trip to Europe, something we didn't see in Civil War. He speaks with Tony's assistant, Happy Hogan, played by Jon Favreau, gets on the plane, and initially dons his homemade suit before Happy shows him a brand new one outfitted with all sorts of high-tech upgrades thanks to Stark Industries, since his old suit just had basic web shooters. We get some shots of the airport fight scene, fast forward a bit, and then Tony, played of course by Robert Downey Jr., returns Peter to New York. He helps him film an alibi video for Peter's Aunt May, and Peter mistakes him opening the door for giving him a hug.
We're not there yet.
Don't worry, you will be.
Peter says he'll be ready for his next mission, but after 2 months, nothing happens, as evident by all the texts he sent Happy. So we just get a showcase of him going to school and meet some of his classmates. His best friend Ned, played by Jacob Batalon, the CEO of Sex, Flash Thompson, played by Tony Revolori, he's a dick, and a girl he has a crush on named Liz Allen, played by Laura Harrier. These types of characters were seen in the other Spider-Man movies, so they did something pretty different with this one, and I think all 3 of them work. Most Spider-Man media would have Peter's best friend be Harry Osborn, but Ned is actually based off of Miles Morales' best friend instead, and I think his friendship with Peter is a bit more realistic than Harry, since Ned's also an awkward, nerdy guy, and he has really good chemistry with Peter, so you really easy by their friendship. Flash is normally portrayed as the big, tough football player, but here he's more of an annoying, selfish, rich kid, which I think was a really good way of modernizing him. The jock bully is an archetype we've seen a million times by now, so this interpretation feels a lot more unique. And as someone who started high school the year this movie came out, I found it a lot more relatable since I had to deal with a ton of kids that acted like this back then. And Liz isn't a super complex character, but I think she works here for 2 reasons. One, the previous Spider-Man movies focused on Peter's other high school love interests, Mary Jane Watson and Gwen Stacy, so having Liz be in on this one is a good change of pace. And 2, she isn't just the typical pretty popular girl. Much like Ned, she's also kind of a nerd and helps up with stuff like student council and the academic decathlon.
So while these 3 are the typical supporting cast that we're used to, I think they do enough differently to make them stand out from what came before.
We then get a montage of Peter's school day where we see him making web fluid in chemistry class. We meet another girl named Michelle Jones, played by Zendaya, and she'll be important later, and Peter ends up quitting academic decathlon right before their big competition so he can focus on being Spider-Man, though he tells people that he's just working as an intern for Tony Stark. Then he goes to the local convenience store to get a sandwich, and share some banter with the owner. I really like this scene since it shows Peter's connection to the people around him. One of the most important things about Spider-Man as a character is that he's just as willing to help one person as he is to help 1,000 people, and showing Peter's relationship with less prominent people goes a long way in enforcing that. But then it's time for him to suit up and do his daily patrolling. Cue an montage of him helping people with varying results. He stops a guy from stealing a bike, though we can't find the owner, so he just leaves a note, helps an old lady find directions, does a flip for this guy, and ends up mistaking someone for a car thief, leading to the government-mandated Stan Lee cameo.
Don't make me come down there, you punk.
He leaves Happy a voicemail detailing all the stuff, but before he goes home, he finds 4 guys robbing an ATM, so it's time for some action.
What's up, guys? You forget your PIN number?
I think now is a good time to talk about one of the strongest things in this movie, and it really is Tom Holland's performance.
Now don't get me wrong, I really enjoy both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in the past, but both of them only really nailed half of the character. This is a prime example of a character with 2 separate personalities depending on what role they're in. Peter Parker is an awkward, nerdy geek who doesn't have that many friends and lacks confidence in himself. Spider-Man, however, is a cocky smartass who's constantly making jokes and quips to whatever villains he's fighting, largely because that pisses him off and he finds that funny. It's like the mask turns Peter into a completely different person, but it still feels like himself at his core. Maguire nailed the awkwardness of Peter Parker, though his cockiness as Spider-Man could leave a lot to be desired. Garfield, on the other hand, did a fantastic job of the snarkiness of Spider-Man, though he wasn't as much of a geeky Peter Parker like we're used to. Holland, on the other hand, does both sides perfectly. His nerdiness as Peter comes across as really genuine, but as soon as the mask goes on, he's spinning one-liners left and right, and almost all of them are really funny. He really sells the idea of an outcast who wants to be respected by his peers, and a smartass who wants to mess with bad people. And this scene showcases that transformation perfectly, since his quips with these robbers still make me laugh.
Iron Man! Hey, what are you doing robbing a bank? You're a billionaire.
A lot of people have become very critical of the quippy Marvel humor in the past few years, but Spider-Man was one of the characters that invented that formula, and thankfully this movie does it really well. What does not go well is Peter's attempt at stopping the robbery, since he quickly discovers that they're using weapons that Vulture's been selling, and in the ensuing chaos, the store he went to earlier is blasted, so he rushes in to save the owner and his cat while the robbers get away. He tries to call Happy again, but he doesn't listen since the Avengers are in the process of moving from Stark Tower to a new location upstate, which will be important later. So, disappointingly, Peter returns home and accidentally reveals his secret identity to Ned in a scene that causes physical pain for any LEGO fan.
Question, if Star Wars LEGO sets exist in this world, does that mean Marvel LEGO sets exist too? Because honestly, that would make sense.
Ned naturally starts geeking out over his best friend being a superhero, but Peter tells him to keep the secret from people, especially May. And this line right here is really interesting.
May cannot know. I cannot do that to her right now. You know? I mean, everything that's happened with her, Please.
He doesn't explicitly say what happens, but it seems to hint towards Uncle Ben, who was never officially mentioned in this movie, or even this trilogy really, aside from the other versions of Spider-Man in No Way Home. A lot of people criticize this decision since Uncle Ben is pretty much the core backstory of Spider-Man becoming who he is, whereas here, his main motivation seems to be wanting to be an Avenger, mainly like Iron Man.
I can understand this argument, but personally I think it works here for a couple of reasons.
For starters, we've already been through this whole Uncle Ben thing before. We don't really need to see it again. I remember James Gunn recently said that there are 3 scenes comic book fans don't need to see in movies anymore. Batman's parents getting shot, Superman being sent to Earth, and Spider-Man being bitten by the spider. This was the 3rd Spider-Man iteration in 15 years, and the 2nd one in only 5 years, so while new fans might be a little confused, old fans already know the drill by this point and don't really need to waste time on it. Yes, this is a different continuity, but there's only so many ways you can put a spin on certain elements, and it kind of reaches a point where it just becomes repetitive. Batman v Superman had this kind of issue since it felt nearly identical to Batman Begins, and just wasn't necessary for what that movie was going for. So here we get glimpses into Peter's origin, but we also did get a large amount of time dedicated to it, which is really all you need. The other reason I feel like this works is because this isn't just a Spider-Man movie, it is connected to the wider MCU as a whole. Since Peter is only 15 and superheroes been public knowledge for years at this point, it makes sense that the first thing he would do when given powers is to try and be like them. Hell, he probably witnessed the Battle of New York, so a kid like him wanting to be a superhero is even more logical than it would be otherwise.
So I can see some people being disappointed in this change, but personally I think it works well enough and still keeps true to the spirit of the original character, especially since they end up building to something closer to this in the later movies in the series, but I do not have time to get into that right now.
Speaking of which, Peter goes to dinner with May, played by Marissa Tomei, who a lot of people thought was too young for the part, but remember, she's his aunt, not his grandma, so she doesn't have to be that old. This scene sets up their connection decently. We learn she obviously doesn't want him to be in any danger, and the waiter hits on her. I mean, can't say I blame him. Have you seen My Cousin Vinny? The next day, Ned just bombards Peter with questions, most notably how he got his powers, confirming the spider bite is a thing, how all this stuff works, and if he can be his guy in the chair. We also see a clip of Captain America in gym class.
Pretty sure this guy's a war criminal now, but whatever.
Hey, if Canada's taught me anything, it's not a war crime until it's added to Geneva's list.
Sadly, Liz and her friends talk about how cool Spider-Man is, causing Ned to blurt out that Peter knows him. Of course, nobody believes him, but Liz still invites both of them to her party that night, and Flash suggests Peter also invite Spider-Man. So they come up with a plan, and while Peter seems to get along with Liz well enough, Flash's taunting convinces him to break out the suit, though he gets second thoughts about using it to show off, which is another really good moment. Of course, he gets distracted by the strange energy, so he goes off to investigate, and along the way, we learn he can't swing through an open field since there's no buildings to latch onto, which is one of the funniest jokes in the movie. Yeah, I briefly mentioned it before, but this movie as a whole is hilarious. It's not quite Spider-Verse level funny, but it can come pretty close at points. We see another deal taking place with two of Vulture's goons named Herman Schultz and Jackson Bryce, aka Shocker, selling weapons to Aaron Davis, a criminal who's usually called the Prowler, but he's not at that stage yet. Though Peter crashes the party, causing Shocker to drive off. We get a pretty fun chase sequence through a bunch of people's backyards, one of which is playing Ferris Bueller, which is funny, but when Peter comes close to catching the van, Vulture swoops down and grabs him. He manages to escape his grasp by accidentally opening a parachute, which also causes him to fall into a lake. Thankfully, he's saved by Iron Man, or more accurately, his suit, since Tony himself is on vacation. It turns out Tony put a tracker in the spider suit and has been monitoring Peter this whole time. He warns him not to get involved with this kind of stuff, but of course Peter doesn't listen since he wants to prove himself as an Avenger. However, Tony suggests he should instead focus on being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man instead, since he's got a lot to learn. Although Peter does find this weird gadget that was left behind. Vulture returns to his base and is pissed about them not finishing the deal, so he fires Jackson, but when he threatens to spill the beans, he unintentionally kills him in one of the funniest deaths I have ever seen in a movie.
I thought this was the anti-gravity gun.
That look he gives is just so funny to me.
So he instead gives the gauntlets to Herman, declaring it now you're the Shocker. Back at school the next day, Peter and Ed begin checking out that device and extract the core from it.
Keep your fingers clear of the blades.
Teacher of the Year, everybody. Sadly, some goons show up, so Peter puts a tracking spider on them, which ends up leading to Maryland. Maryland isn't far from DC, which is where the decathlon team is headed, so Peter is able to rejoin. Really easily, I might add. In the hotel room, Peter convinces Ned to remove the tracker in his suit, as well as to disable the training wheels protocol, because he thinks it'll help improve himself as a legit superhero. When he tries to sneak out, though, he runs into Liz and the rest of the team sneaking off to the hotel pool, and while he clearly wants to join them, he continues with his mission.
One of the main underlying themes of this movie is that Peter is giving up a lot for essentially a thankless position that no one is really asking him to do, and in some cases needs him to do.
He's quit several activities, including band, science club, and as we saw at decathlon, just in case he gets a call and needs to be ready, but that still hasn't come. He's giving up a vast majority of his personal life to be Spider-Man, even though nobody is really asking him to do that, which is one of the most common things each version of the character struggles with. So a large part of Peter's arc in this movie is about learning to not take these kinds of things for granted, especially at such a young age. After he leaves, he tracks down some of Vulture's thugs and discovers an advanced AI in his suit. Since he deactivated the training wheels protocol, the full capabilities of his suit have been activated, which unfortunately ends up being a little too much as he has no idea what his web shooters will do, causing the thugs to get away. He also finds out there's an instant kill feature, because of course there is.
Activating instant kill.
No, I don't want to kill anybody.
Don't worry, that will come in handy later.
Another chase sequence where Vulture tries to steal more tech from this truck, and while Peter is able to stop him, he ends up knocking himself out and wakes up in this warehouse. He's stuck there for the night, so he decides to pass the time by taking a refresher course and learning what kind of stuff the suit can do, as well as giving the AI the name Karen. And he does all this over the course of a mere 37 minutes.
What?
But more concerningly, he discovers that the core he found is highly explosive if exposed to radiation, and Ned ends up putting it in his backpack to keep an eye on it. Peter misses the decathlon, which the team wins thanks to Michelle, and they all take a trip to the Washington Monument to celebrate. But the X-ray sets off the core, causing it to explode in the elevator, trapping everyone inside at the risk of falling. But Peter shows up just in time to save the day. Shame he can't run up walls like in the video game, or it would have been much more efficient. But hey, at least saving Liz went better than saving Gwen. Too soon? By this point, Vulture is becoming more and more desperate since his deals keep getting foiled by Spider-Man. His crew suggests he try robbing Tony Stark, but he shuts them down.
This little bastard in red tights shows up. And he thinks he can tear down everything I built.
Did I mention Michael Keaton is awesome in this movie?
He strikes a perfect balance of being funny, sympathetic, and intimidating. I mentioned this earlier, but you really feel him grow more and more aggressive as the movie goes on and his plans keep failing, which causes him to make riskier and riskier moves. After all, at first he was just building the weapons and sending them off to be sold, but now he's actively interfering with stuff and attempting to steal more tech for a higher payout. So while his initial motivation is understandable, his actions become way more unforgivable. Peter ends up getting detention, which leads to another cat movie, but he ditches it to try and find Vulture. He finds out his suit has been recording everything due to a system known as the Baby Monitor Protocol.
Yeah, of course it is.
And is able to track down Aaron Davis, though his intimidation method ends up not being very effective.
What do you mean? What happened to my voice?
I heard you by the bridge. I know what a girl sound like.
I'm not a girl. I'm a boy.
Though thankfully Aaron is willing to talk, since despite being a criminal, he is worried about those kinds of weapons being out there, since it could end up hurting his nephew, and obvious hint to Miles Morales being a thing.
Sadly, it's kind of hard for me to take the scene seriously now that I've actually watched Community, because at this point, I don't see the Prowler, I just see Troy Barnes.
Aaron tells Peter Vulture is making a deal at the Staten Island Ferry, and we get another great exchange.
Hey, that's gonna dissolve in 2 hours.
No. Come fix this.
2 hours. You deserve that.
I got ice cream in
You
here,
deserve
man.
that. You're a criminal. Bye, Mr. Criminal.
Peter goes to the ferry, but before he can dive in, he gets a call from Tony, who quickly realizes something's up. Peter hangs up and things do seem to go well, but then the FBI shows up, which catches him off guard. Vulture opens up his wing pack and one of the weapons goes haywire, cutting the ferry in half. Peter tries to web it back together, but misses a spot, causing the entire thing to fall apart. This is why I don't build ships in bottles. Luckily, and tragically, Iron Man swoops in to save the day. And this isn't just the suit this time, it's really him.
If you even cared, you'd actually be here.
I love how much Peter's expression changes when Tony steps out of that suit. I mean, it's one thing to be reprimanded over call, but it's another to be reprimanded in person.
It turns out Tony was the one who called the FBI because he was the only one who believed what Peter was saying about the weapons. This whole scene just hits insanely hard, since you really feel bad for Peter despite knowing that he messed up. We also get this great exchange between him and Tony.
I just wanted to be like you.
And I wanted you to be better.
It's a really great dichotomy of the people who wants to live up to their teacher and the teacher who doesn't want the people to make the same mistakes they have. Not only giving us a great look at Peter's character, but Tony's as well. For what could easily be a throwaway or fan servicey role, Tony does play a really good part in this movie. But he ends up taking the suit back, and Peter begs him not to, saying he's nothing without it, leading to one of my favorite lines in the entire movie.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it, okay?
Unfortunately, Vulture's finally reaches breaking point and decides to have his suit upgraded so that he can rob the Stark shipment. Peter goes home to May, who's naturally upset that he ran off from detention, but then she comforts him when she realizes how upset he is about, quote, losing the Stark internship. Another great showcase for how much she cares about him. Back at school, he apparently ends up with super detention, which is pretty understandable given how he just ran away. But things do start to look up a little bit when he's able to ask Liz to homecoming. Hey, that's in the title. And it's here we get to see Peter start to live normally again. He focuses on school again, hangs out with Ned more, and May helps him get ready for the dance. A good showcase of all the stuff he was missing out on by spending all of his time on being Spider-Man.
But of course, all this just comes crumbling down when he goes to pick up Liz from the dance, because who else answers the door but her father?
He must be Peter.
Oh.
Yep, Vulture is Liz's dad, and I am so glad they saved this reveal for the third act, because it makes for a perfect oh crap moment. This whole sequence is genuinely the most intense part of the movie. Peter instantly recognizes Adrian, but he doesn't recognize Peter, so the tension is so thick you couldn't cut through it even with a steak knife. I mean, meeting your date's parents is already a stressful scenario, especially with Adrian pulling all the protective dad questions, but adding on the fact that he is a supervillain just makes things 10 times worse, and it goes from 10 to 100 and then 1,000 when Adrian offers to drive Peter and Liz to the dance since he's going out of town that night. This scene in the car still makes me wince as Liz talks about how Peter went missing both at her party and DC, and Adrian slowly starts to put the pieces together about why he sounds familiar, leading to one of the most terrifying things I have ever seen in a superhero movie.
I bet you were glad when your old pal Spider-Man showed up in the elevator, though. Good old Spider-Man.
Again, Jesus, Michael Keaton is good in this.
Before he goes into the dance, though, Adrian says he's willing to forgive Peter since he saved Liz from the elevator, but if he gets involved with this stuff again, he'll kill him. Seriously, how does the tension for the scene just continuously get worse? Peter, quote, thanks him for saving his life and heads into the dance, but of course, he has to blow Liz off and sneak away. He finds his old suit in his locker and heads outside only to get jumped by new Shocker. He loses his web shooters, but luckily Ned drops in to save the day. Peter tells Ned that Liz's dad is Vulture and tells him to head to the library. He then steals Flash's car, which is hilarious, calls Ned, and tells him to track his phone that he left in Adrian's car, which is a super clever plan. And Ned officially becomes the guy in the chair. Awesome. They find out Vulture is headed for Stark Tower, so Ned calls Happy to warn him, but it's moving day, so he just blows him off. Ned then gets busted by the teacher, leading to easily the best joke in the movie.
I'm looking at porn.
I think the best part of this is the fact that we don't actually get to see her reaction, so it is left completely up to the imagination. And that's amazing.
Peter finds Vulture in a warehouse who says he's disappointed to see Peter and that he's doing this all for Liz. And this is one of the rare examples of a villain monologue actually helping with his plan rather than hurting it, since he uses this as a distraction, allowing him to knock down these pillars and trap Peter in the rubble before flying off.
And this leads to what is hands down my favorite scene in the movie.
Pinned down under the rubble, Peter begins crying out for help, but since no one's around, no one can hear him. And no one can help him. There's no music in the scene. The only sound is the rubble shifting and Peter's screams, which are just chilling.
Hello?
But then, at his lowest point, he takes off his mask and looks at it. He then remembers what Tony said to him about how he shouldn't have the suit if he's nothing without it.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it.
And it's that moment he finally realizes the suit doesn't make him Spider-Man, he makes him Spider-Man, and he can still help people even without Stark technology. This is what gives him the motivation he needs to escape the rubble and go after Vulture.
Oh, come on, Spider-Man!
I absolutely love this. It is a phenomenal moment for Peter's character, and one of the most powerful things in any Spider-Man movie. This scene is really what elevates this movie from a solid fun time to one of my absolute favorites.
The Stark plane takes off and Vulture chases after it, though he feels a little resistance, which is hilarious. He infiltrates the plane, but Peter follows suit, and the fight begins.
And if I have any issues with this movie, it's that the climax is a little underwhelming.
It's not horrible, but everything's really dark, so it's kind of hard to see, and the fight between Peter and Vulture is just kind of a generic fist fight. They don't really take advantage of him being able to fly, since most of it takes place in a plane. There are some interesting moments, like Peter almost getting syndromed and preventing another 9/11, but overall, nothing too exciting happens here. Not bad, but nowhere near as compelling as a lot of other superhero movies, or even Spider-Man movies. They end up crashing on the beach, and Vulture tries to run off with some crates, but his wings were damaged in the fight and are about to explode. But Peter still does the right thing and saves his life, though he does web him up and leave a note like the bike from earlier, which is hilarious. Vulture is arrested, which means Liz is forced to move away, along with her mother, so things sadly didn't go well with her. But on a lighter note, we learn that Michelle Jones has friends that call her MJ, so that's clearly hinted at something between her and Peter. But then he gets a call from Happy, who's in the bathroom, and he takes him to the new headquarters upstate. There, Tony offers Peter the chance to become a full-fledged Avenger, even offering him this awesome new Iron Spider suit. But Peter turns it down.
This is where I can really talk about Peter's arc in this movie, or more accurately, his arcs, because he really does have two.
The first one, like I already talked about with the rubble scene, is him learning to be his own hero. Rather than trying to be like Iron Man or any of the other Avengers, he should focus more on what makes him a superhero, which he did. But the other is learning to not take the things in little life for granted. As I pointed out many times, he's given up a lot of stuff to become Spider-Man, which is important, but there is a point where you can give up too much, which he was clearly doing. So taking some time away from it made him realize that he shouldn't forget to take time for himself or the people he cares about, like Ned and May. So him turning down this offer shows that he has grown a lot, but he's aware that he has more growing to do, since he is still just a teenager after all. And I think this is a great way to give him some growth here, while still leaving room for more in future movies. So Happy takes him home, and Tony proposes to Pepper Potts. Cool, I guess. Peter returns to his apartment and finds a special gift waiting for him, the Stark suit, which he happily dons, and unfortunately forgets to shut the door, leading to a hilarious ending.
What the f?
But wait, this is a Marvel movie, so we have some mid- and post-credit scenes to get to. The first one shows Adrian in prison talking with his buyer from the ferry, who I genuinely forget is in the movie, asking if he knows Spider-Man's identity, but Adrian keeps it a secret. As of 2026, nothing has come of the scene, since the only time we've seen Vulture again is this, but whatever. And then afterwards, we get one last Captain America tape, essentially trolling the audience for waiting.
Here to talk to you about one of the most valuable traits a soldier or student can have. Patience. And you wonder why you waited so long for something so disappointing. How many more of these?
And there we have Spider-Man Homecoming, a movie that I think deserves way more love than it gets from the general public.
It might not be the biggest Spider-Man movie, but it doesn't always need to be. It's a fun reintroduction to the new version of a beloved character, and it does that really well. It's creative, funny, charming, has some amazing moments, and contains easily the best villain in any Spider-Man movie up to that point, which I think is enough to make me say that this is still one of the best movies to come from the MCU, and one of my favorite Spider-Man movies ever. And the best part is that the quality will only continue to go up for our favorite web-slinger, but we can get into those later. For now, thank you all for watching, and don't let the door hit you on the way out.